So I'm carrying on from my previous video, what I showed what I'm doing with my strawberries. But while I'm out here and before the torrential rain starts over the next few days, I want to be able to get a few more jobs done. Now, one of those jobs is to top up some of my no-dig beds. I've now got a few beds that are empty and they've been weeded. And this compost is now ready to actually go on top. Now, each year with a no-dig bed, you just want a couple of, well, about an inch, a couple of centimetres or so of additional compost just to refeed your beds. That's all you'll need for your growing season next year. And that's what I intend on doing. But I do have a few beds that are bare at the moment that I actually want to make a bit bigger. Now, all our plot is either wood chip or compost. There's a few slabs here and there, but I prefer using the wood chip because it makes it non-slippy in really wet weather. It's a natural product and it's really easy for us to source. So in these areas where I want to have the beds, I'm just going to remove some of the wood chip. Now, wood chip is great because it actually breaks down naturally in situ. Now, a lot of people will use wood chip that's several years old within their compost bins or to actually just to grow in. It's a great nutrient-rich product. Now, you don't want to have wood chip under your beds necessarily because it will steal your nitrogen. But most of this wood chip has now been scraped off and I'll be able to put fresh compost on that area, extending those beds. Now, why do I want to extend those beds? Well, I found the sizes that we started with were a little bit narrow, especially when it comes to watering. Because we're on a slope, the water sometimes naturally rolled off, especially if it was the extreme heat wave that we had last year. The ground was quite crusted, and even though in the areas where we did do no-dig beds, the soil was better at retaining moisture, I want to be able to have a bigger bed. I think now we've created our own compost a lot more than what we did last year. We can now start extending, and that's the great thing about no-dig beds. If you don't use the edging, if you don't use edging like wood or anything else, as the years go on, you can extend those beds. Now we know what works and what doesn't work on this plot, but we're still learning, to be honest. I know which beds I want to extend. So I'm going to start getting some compost to extend that one bed. Now you can see from this compost that it is quite chunky in places. Now your edges are never really broken down the same as what's in the middle. But this all got started, but all this compost was started in February last year on this particular pile, and it's been maturing ever since. Now, I'm not bothered about sticks and things like that within it because it will just carry on breaking down, but you can just remove this. Now, for our beds at the moment, I'm only actually going to be using about 2 wheelbarrows on each bed just to top up, just to refeed those beds. It doesn't need a lot. Now, obviously, as time goes on, this will actually settle down and those big lumps and clumps will actually break down to give a lovely fine soil on top of your beds. Now, to be honest, I would like to have left this even to spring next year, but I've got jobs I need to complete now so we can actually carry on with plans that we've got through the rest of the winter. Now, this one bin here is one of 5 compost bins that we've got. Now, there's 3 of them that will not be ready till next year, and in fact we're still filling the one bin. But we've got this one that is ready now and another one that will be ready probably mid-winter, but we may not need it to the spring. Now, I've been quite happy with the amount of compost that we've been able to create this year, but it's not been easy, but massively rewarding compared to how much compost is to buy in. Now, this is the area that I'm actually going to fill. It was 2 smaller beds Now normally with a no dig you would put down some cardboard or something like that if it's quite weedy, but because we've had wood chip on this area, it's actually quite weed free because we've been trying to maintain it as we've been going along. So I'm just going to start putting on compost, and because these beds both need topping up, it doesn't matter where it goes because it's going to be one large bed all the way back there. Now I'm not going to remove my fennel at the moment because I'm still seeing insects enjoying these flowers, and the lettuces are still going as well. So I'll just be at the moment I'll just be doing this one square ready for planting for next year. Now that is about 4 barrows worth, give or take, and now that's going to be spread over both the beds. Now last year we actually didn't have enough compost to do these beds as deep as what we actually wanted to do, so that's why I'm going to put on a little bit more over the top of these beds. I would hate to think how much it would cost now to actually just buy in this amount of compost and the quality of the compost that you would get. So all we need to do is to start raking into its place. Now this is quite lumpy, but it will break down. And it's absolutely teeming with life. So I'm actually going to do this quite thick, more than what you'd normally do for a no-dig bed. But like I said, I think last year I hadn't actually put quite enough on. And while I've got enough compost to do it, I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. Now I'm not bothered about the sticks and the bits like that in there. Eventually it will break down and won't cause any issues. The one problem that we do have is we get a lot of rubbish blowing from the estates close by, and especially on days like this there's an awful lot of rubbish flying around. But don't worry, you can just remove it as and when you see it. So I'm going to get another 1 or 2 barrows for this area. Now this is it, finally done. Now I may top it up again a little bit as it starts breaking down, since it is still very, very chunky. And the rest of the bed will be done as and when I take out the rest of the vegetables that are there. This will happily break down over the winter months, and hopefully it will give me a successful growing year next year. Now this new area is going to be much, much wider than what we had before. But the one great thing about no dig, you can actually walk on your beds without it being an issue. I could never do that on a bed that I've actually hand dug over. It would have compacted, made slippy, and it would have been an absolute nightmare. I know because I did it for years. So the one good thing with it is that it won't compact down to that extent by just casually walking over the top. But this is giving me so much more of a growing area for next year. If you go too narrow on your beds, the edge of your bedding, a lot of the times your plants may struggle on the edge of your no-dig beds to some degree, especially in the first year or two. If you're using wood chip paths, those paths will start breaking down and adding nutrients where the roots of those plants will actually go into the paths and start finding all the nutrients that they actually want. But if you're just starting off, try and go for as wide as what you can go realistically. It doesn't have to be mega expensive. If you want to start doing no-dig beds, just start off with 1 or 2 beds. Do it in a way that you can afford or easily do. Now, you're still going to get your weeds and you're still going to get everything else, but trust me, it is so much easier to weed a no-dig bed than it is to weed a heavy clay soil. Again, I've been doing both types this year. Eventually, the bindweed and things like that does start disappearing, if you keep on top of it, that is. Now, I haven't used any cardboard for the middle bit, for the new extra bit of bed, because I didn't need to suppress any weeds, because the wood chips had already done that job for me. I've just raked up the wood chips and given a fresh new area for the compost. So how do you find no-dig? Do you find it helpful? Do you find it easier? Or actually, do you think that it's just full of, well, rubbish, and we should all go back to the traditional old ways of growing fruits and our vegetables? I've done it both ways, and I really do believe that no-dig, for me personally, having health issues and other few issues going on, it helps save time, it helps save your energy, helps save your back, definitely, and it doesn't have to cost the earth to do a no-dig bed. So throughout the next month or so, I'll be creating brand new no-dig beds throughout the actual allotment. But at the moment, I'm just going to focus on topping up the beds that I've got cleared with the new compost to refeed for next year. To be honest, I could never go back to the traditional way of gardening. Having no-dig has allowed me to actually experience the growing seasons again due to my ill health. And it's given us so much back in harvests. But it doesn't have to be expensive. You can even use good old manure. If you can get that for free, get that on your beds. So long as it's, well, try to get it as rotted down as possible. A lot of the times it doesn't cost anything. If you want to give no-dig a go, start small and start building up each year. This will dramatically help with any costs of compost. If you can make as much compost as you can on your own, this will dramatically reduce any additional cost when it comes to no-dig. So let me know your experience, guys, but there'll definitely be more no-dig videos coming very soon.